Okay. All right, here we go. Sorry for the delay. We're just sharing a few, so we were sharing a presentation on a few social media platforms. So it just took some time to share. So welcome. My name is Anthony Tran. I'm the Senior Migration Agent here at Kingsbridge, Australia. Today, we're going to be talking about the changes in the business visa programs and essentially, how to achieve the results that you need. And we'll go through the different state nomination requirements, especially those that have changed since July 1st, 2021. Looking at the business visas and your suitability, and also looking at eligible business investments. So throughout this presentation, you're more than welcome to ask questions where my team will attend to them accordingly. And if I do get to see the questions midway through the presentation, I'm happy to address them, as I go through it. All right. So a little bit about us. I'll talk about a little bit about us, the state nomination requirements, the visa subclasses, and eligible investments. So about us. So essentially what we are is we're a migration and education firm here in Western Australia. We do help students and business visa migrants alike, skilled migrants and so forth. What we've discovered recently is that through our work here in Australia, we do deal with a lot of migrants who have been advised offshore, but do not have the ongoing support here. Not to say that the advice they're receiving offshore is incorrect or such, but what issues that they have is that some business migrants who choose to come to Western Australia, for instance, aren't given the right connections and the right people to meet to ensure that they can start their business, or they weren't too sure on what area they're meant to invest in. So a lot of times we get walk-ins, we get people who already hold business migration visas, but haven't actually done anything yet. And so what we would like to do is to reach out to a broader spectrum to enable us to contact those who might need help and to obviously massage the process for them. So our first priority is to connect you with trustworthy people and businesses. We help you to migrate with the best pathway to Australian permanent residency and ensure that you invest in a safely manner to fulfill your visa conditions. So we're going to talk about some of the visa subclasses right now. So essentially, there's three core business visas which people focus on. Yes, there's the entrepreneurial stream, but these are quite difficult and not every state entertains them. So in short, we'll go through the 188A, the 188B, and the 188C, which is the business innovation stream. Oh, how did I go like that? Let's go back. Oh. It's a business innovation stream, the business investor stream, so that middle part should actually change title, and the significant investor stream. So in short, the innovation stream is for somebody who has a business already anywhere in the world, where it meets the minimum turnover requirement and you hold a minimum business and personal asset requirement, and you would like to come to Australia and open up a business. Now, a lot of people think that I open the business first, then I do the business visa and go from there. Or people think that, I want to open up a business in Australia and that should give me the business innovation visa immediately. That is actually incorrect. What you need to do is to ensure you are eligible, you present your argument, you present your evidence, you get the visa first, make your way to Australia and conduct your business plan. The 188B is the investor stream. And this is designed for people who don't have a business that qualifies or has a lot of investments which we can use as a way to qualify yourself for this visa. This can be, through things such as real estate, stocks, bond, gold, etc. Okay. And then the last one is the 188C, which is the $5 million investment visa. That one, essentially, we need to demonstrate how you came about the $5 million and you just want to invest in Australia. So both the B and the C essentially allows you to be in Australia. You don't need to conduct business because you have made an investment at the time that your visa was granted, and you need to hold that investment for the 4 years. So this is good for people who aren't too confident about entering the market and feel more safe with investing in designated investments. So we'll go through this a lot more in detail. So going down the column for the 188A here on the left, essentially that's the business innovation stream. There's a requirement for you to have a minimum asset of $1.25 million. Previously, the minimum asset was $800,000, but as of the 1st of July, that has now changed to 1.25 million. There is a points test which we need to fulfill. That's based on your age, your skills, how long you own your business for, your assets, your English score, your qualifications. Generally speaking, most of our applicants who meet the minimum criteria of investments and business turnover should meet the 65 points relatively easy. You need to be at the age of 55, and there's an opportunity for you to get an age waiver for states such as Western Australia. But should you actually get an age waiver, you would actually need to pay 50% more and invest 50% more. Not pay application fees, I do apologize, but you need to contribute 50% more, okay? So the annual turnover requirement to qualify for this visa is 750,000 Australian dollars in 2 fiscal years in the last 4 years. So that could be perhaps 2019 and 2021, okay? It doesn't need to be in the last 2 years, but any 2 years in the last 4. You need to own at least 51% or more of the business with a turnover of less than $400,000 per year, or you need to own 30% or more of the business if you have a turnover of more than $400,000 per year, or you own 10% of a publicly listed company. All right. If I go to the middle column here, this is the 1.8B investor stream. Now, this one requires you to have 2.5 million Australian dollars in net business and personal asset, okay? Once again, you need to score at least 65 points, and there's an age limitation of 55. Again, there is an age waiver here for some states where you're able to make this investment or have this investment in the state where you have to contribute 50% more. To be eligible for this visa, you either need to have a qualifying business, which you own at least 10% of the company, or have held at least $2.5 million. This, I say combined, because this is with your spouse and yourself, and you need to hold that for at least 1 year in the last 5 fiscal years before applying for the visa. So should you have $2.5 million of net business and personal asset for 12 months over 2020 to 21, you'll be able to meet this criteria, okay? You need to have at least 3 years experience in managing 1 or more qualifying businesses or investments, okay? So again, if you have a few properties which you buy, sell, and you manage yourself in a sense of rental and things like that, this will meet that criteria. But if you're trying to rely on your residential property which you reside in, let's just say for my Hong Kong clients, which the property prices have grown exponentially, that is very difficult to argue that this is an investment. We will have to rely on your 3 years business experience, okay? You also need to have a successful investment and qualifying business activity. So again, you can't really inherit money and claim that, you know, I have a successful career. You can inherit money and reinvest it and demonstrate your portfolio, but I can't really have you pretty much own a few assets and don't do anything about it. It's quite difficult to argue. So that's something you need to be careful as well. At the same time, you need to demonstrate a high level of management skills with investments. So again, if you own properties, you sort of know when the right price to buy or sell. We need to demonstrate this once you make this application. The other stream is obviously a lot more expensive. This is the $5 million investment visa, the SRV. But as you see, there's a lot of less constraint per se in terms of qualifying for this visa. Here, there is no points test. There is no age requirement. We just need to demonstrate you have genuine access to $5 million to be invested in designated investments in Australia. Okay. You must have a genuine intention to also hold this investment for 4 years. So this is where a lot of our clients who do their visas offshore and they come on shore and they didn't really understand the state that they want to live in. And then they realize that I actually shortchanged myself. I don't have any money to buy a property now because I've invested the $5 million. This is why we need to advise our clients. You need to budget yourself correctly and make sure you find the right stream. Okay. This ownership and investment experience is viewed highly, but is not required. And you must have to be able to successfully proven that the funds were acquired legally. So some people do inherit these funds from the family members. So you need to have a gift deed and so forth. But should you have, you know, $5 million without the taxation documents and it wasn't inherited, then you will have some issues. Okay. And you must have the funds approved for transfer for the respective investments. So some countries, for instance, will not let you release the funds. For instance, my clients in Vietnam, sometimes it is quite difficult to get the approval to move $5 million. But generally speaking, these are the things that we need to do and pre-qualify before you even lodge the visa. So the common problem we have once people have got their visas, it got granted in your home country, and you start to make your preparations to come to Australia, and you have a slight understanding of what you need to do, but not a full comprehensive understanding of the whole process on how to get your permanent residency under the subclass 888. So we're going to go through the requirements for the 888 visas, again, under the 888A, B, and C. And you'll see the things that you might find a bit difficult for you, which might persuade you to go under a different category. So again, the 18A, 888A is a business innovation stream visa. This visa essentially requires you to operate a business in whatever state you want to be nominated in. So you must invest and own a business in Australia. The business in Australia must have a turnover of at least $300,000 per year, and you must satisfy any two of the following three. That is, have business net asset of at least $200,000, employ at least 2 full-time eligible employees, i.e. Australian residents, permanent resident or citizens, and a personal and business net asset in Australia for at least $600,000. So this is where some people get stuck because it depends on the nature of your business. For instance, some people want to do project construction and management. You know, employing 2 full-time staff is quite difficult. Someone who's doing import-export, you know, this can also be difficult to ensure that you actually have staff. So if you're concerned about the nature of your business, it doesn't need employees, then we need you to focus on and to make sure that you have at least $200,000 in business assets and at least $600,000 in business and personal assets in Australia. All right. Here, there's also a residency requirement. Currently, with the COVID concessions and the way that we're doing things, it's 1 year residency in Australia within the 3 years prior to applying. So what does that mean? Okay, so you need to turn over at least $300,000 for 2 fiscal years. You get this visa for 4 years. So essentially, if you do not meet the turnover requirement, then I would need to do an extension for another 2 years. You need to ensure that you lived in your nominated state for at least 1 year in the 3 years before applying, okay? This can be also done by your spouse, should you have one. So this is quite important because a lot of people do not reside here because the nature of their business, they had to go overseas. For those that were stuck during the COVID period, they were able to use the time outside of Australia as time inside of Australia, okay? The 888B visa is the the investor stream. Here, you need to propose net assets of at least $2.5 million to be invested in complying investors specified by the Department of Immigration. So this is not going to be, my friend has a company, he has a construction company, I would like to nominate $2.5 million there. It doesn't work like that. Essentially, you need to go through fund management, where the fund managers will manage this for you to make sure that you make compliant investments. And of course, you'll be paying fund management fees, okay? But again, some people find that this is more lower risk because they have the skill sets to understand stocks and bonds and so forth. So that's probably something that might be appealing, especially for those who just doesn't want to open up a restaurant here because I did manufacturing in Asia, okay? You need to agree to reinvest the $2.5 million into any nominated state assets upon maturity of the complying investment. Now, this is the one change which has sort of made things a lot different in the past, because in the past, everyone used to simply withdraw the money after the 4-year period, after buying the previously state bonds, and you just apply for your PR. What the department wants to see now is a continuation of investment. So though that I need you to hold the investment for 4 years before applying for your PR, they'll like to see your intentions to continue with the investment. And we find that this is probably where a lot of people will get refused, because they have now taken the $2.5 million and did not invest them in the complying investments. And at the time of decision, these investments are no longer there. The case officer should, according to the legislation, refuse the visa. So it's quite critical for all of us to understand that the biggest concerns that we have here is to ensure that we have the complying investments up until the decision of your 888 visa. And currently that can take 1 to 2 years to be granted. So we're talking about potentially 6 years in some aspects. So do keep that in mind. There's also a requirement for you to reside in Australia for 2 years in the 3 years before applying for the visa. So the danger here is that you might hold the visa for 4 years. You spend your first year here in Australia. Year 2, you don't come here. Year 3, you don't come here. And year 4, you arrive again, but you won't meet the fulfillment requirements for the permanent residency, which is 2 out of 3 years in the last 3 years, okay? So please keep that in mind as well. The last one is the 888C visa. This is the $5 million investor visa. So this one is at least $500,000 invested in venture capital and grown private equity funds, at least $1.5 million in approved management funds that is in emerging companies listed in the ASX, and at least $3 million in balanced investments managed funds. Again, we will introduce you to approved fund managers who can assist you with this. And obviously from there, you need to find the person that you're quite comfortable to deal with. The reason why this visa is attractive is for the bottom right-hand corner here, the residency requirements for the 888. You only need to spend 40 days for every year that you hold this visa. So it's a lot less than the requirements for the 888A and B. Should you nominate your spouse, the secondary applicant, to be the person to reside here, then it'll be 180 days. So essentially half a year every year for the 4-year period, okay? So now we talked about the visa programs, and that was already confusing enough, obviously. But the worst part about this is that every state have their own requirements. I'm only going to talk about the 188A pathways, because these are the major changes which has affected a lot of the investors. So I'm only going to talk about 4 states. Oh, no, come back to me, please. Okay, I'm only going to talk about the 4 states that we find that is relevant to us. These are the 4 markets that we primarily focus on, but of course we do look into South Australia as well. But I found that it was a bit difficult to fit a 5th column. Should you want to know more about the other states, feel free to contact me and I'll explain this to you in more further detail. So essentially what I'm trying to do here is to do a state-by-state comparison. And the reason for this is because everyone always hears about their friend going to Melbourne, going to Sydney, and he opened up a convenience store or a petrol station, or he did construction and he got his PR. Well, after COVID, after July 1, the states have changed their strategies, and it's very important to actually be up to speed. Hence why the purpose of this presentation today. So in Queensland, there's a requirement for you to have a commitment to live in Queensland and have business and personal assets of at least $1.25 million, which is transferable to Queensland. The investment requirement will need you to invest at least $400,000 in Brisbane or Gold Coast, or you can invest $300,000 in the regional areas outside these two cities. The additional requirements that you need to understand is that should you want to do export, you must develop international markets for Queensland products. If you want to import products as a business, then it must be innovative, advanced technology, or unavailable to the Queensland market. Property development is not accepted. Okay, so this has caused a lot of issues for those who are trying to enter the market in circumstances which they feel a bit more comfortable in. In New South Wales, you have to be less than 50. So they don't allow you to be over the age of 55, or over the age of 50, sorry, let alone 55. You must have a bachelor's degree or have at least 3 years experience in a New South Wales target sector, or 5 years experience in a non-target sector. Now that is going to prove to be very difficult for some clients who obviously traditionally did not have any qualifications, but from their skill sets, they've developed an empire. Here, there's a requirement for you to have $1.75 million in business and personal assets in transferable to Sydney. And should you go to regional, it's $1.25 million. The business turnover for whatever business that you're going to conduct needs to be $1.25 million if it's in Sydney. And if it's in regional New South Wales, it's only $750,000. So what are the New South Wales target sectors? This is advanced manufacturing, food and beverage manufacturing, agri-tech, aerospace and defense, renewable energy, digital technology, cybersecurity, or mid-tech. Again, this is quite difficult for some people. If they don't have a qualification, you need to have experience in these sectors. So if you're a developer, for instance, in Asia, this is going to be very difficult. I would actually have to ensure that you have a bachelor's degree, which meets the Australian standard. If you are going to the regional sector, it can be any of the above aforementioned target sectors, but you can also have an investment history or business history in technologically enabled primary industries, critical minerals, and recycling and waste. Okay, the business investment minimum criteria is $500,000 in Sydney and $300,000 in regional New South Wales. So you can see it's about $100,000 more in Sydney than it is in Brisbane, but the regional centers for regional Queensland and regional New South Wales is more or less the same. If I go to the third column, it's going to be Victoria. You must be under the age of 55, unless you're doing the 188C. You must meet the English requirements. So this can be from an IELTS test, or it could be from history of studying in English. You must have completed education in the STEM field. So this means you must have qualifications in either science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or medicine, or hold an MBA. If you do not hold any of these qualifications, then you must have 3 years experience in health, digital, agri-food, advanced manufacturing, and new energy sectors to qualify for a 188 visa in Victoria. Should you have these qualifications or work experience. You can invest in Victoria where there is no limitation on how much to invest and turnover, but they do exclude businesses such as property development, gift stores, convenience stores, a cafe and restaurants. And these have been diluted significantly because obviously there's been a lot of investors who wanted something that is transactional, something that they can deal with, which doesn't require too much management skills because they're too scared to undertake something in Australia due to legislative differences and understanding how the markets work. If we go to Western Australia, there's an age waiver available for anyone over the age of 55. Again, there's a penalty on 50% more that you have to invest. You need to have a strong commitment to stay in Western Australia. So let's just say you came over here, but they know that you're going to do business interstate. You might not get nominated. You can do property development where it needs to be at least 3 dwellings. So here in Western Australia, you can do subdivisions if you buy a piece of land or an old house, which can be subdividable due to zoning codes such as R60, R80 or above. So let's just say you have an 800 square meter house, it's zoned as R60. You can demolish that house and build 3 dwellings on one piece of land. This will meet the criteria. However, you need to also understand that building one site doesn't make you a developer. A developer will always continue to acquire more sites and build, okay? The newest changes that they have is that property development cannot be undertaken in partnership with any other party. So you cannot get another project developer here and say, I'm going to go 50-50 with you. I'll fund it, you manage it. Under the current rules, you will not get approved. Of course, you need to find a builder. You need to find tradespeople and so forth. So this is something you can do as a developer. Come in, find a builder, make sure you control your builder, or you can become a bit more hands-on and ensure that you find the right subcontractors through your builders. But of course, you need to have a builder's license to build a house here. And a lot of our investors wouldn't have that. There is a strict stance here in Western Australia on recycling businesses for any subclasses. So what we mean by recycling is not the actual industry of recycling, but it's more rather that you purchase another business which was used for a business visa and you just inherit their concept, you inherit their contracts, you inherit their staff. Same thing if you were to buy a restaurant and that restaurant was previously used by somebody to get their permanent residency, it's very dangerous. So this is very important that you do actually find out what you're buying and who you're buying from. This is the reason why we actually don't assist you with purchasing properties. We will send you to a business broker. But to avoid conflict of interest, we don't go recommending our friends. There has been instances where there were agents who have, introduced people to buy an investment which was previously used by their ex-client, and those agents have now been barred and cancelled. So to avoid conflict of interest, we do not make those recommendations. We do not allow you to sell to new investors, but we also assist you to make sure that this property, this project, whatever it is, was not used in a previous investment. So as you can see, the 4 states here have a very different position. Western Australia and Victoria does not require you to invest a minimum amount. They comply with the minimum with the Department of Immigration, and they set up their rules on how they want you to invest and how you qualify. Of course, Western Australia is more flexible. We don't need to pre-qualify what business you did previously in your home country. It goes down to your business plan and how you present yourself. Whereas Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria, there are reasons for them to want to understand what you're going to do, your intentions, and whether or not you're going to contribute to the economy by bringing a fixed amount, okay? So how does the process work? Essentially, we start on the left side here. The applicant ideally will find someone like us who would advise them on their options. assist them with the pre-qualifying stage, where we'll go to step 2, where we'll collate and prepare the supporting evidence. From there, we need to look at step 3 to review the source of funds and the nominated funds. The reason why we put the nominated funds like this is because some people would tell me, hey, Anthony, I've got $3 million in this account in Singapore because that is from my business. And then by the time that we need to transfer $1.25 million, the money came from a bank account in Cambodia, which was not disclosed. And should that arise, the visa will get refused. So it's very important that you declare things accordingly. Step 4, we then advise you to come and to Australia to do some research and visit and understand the market. It is very dangerous to have a business plan without visiting a country for anyone really. So we do advise this precautionary step to understand tax law and things like that. Once you've actually had a better understanding, we'll go down to step 5. We start to look at your business and relocation plan to ensure that you actually understand your next steps and to understand where you need to be at best exposure and so forth. From there, we put our argument together and we present it under step 6, which is the application for state nomination. Here, should you want to go to WA, we know how to cater to them. We know what they want. So we need to make sure that we do our business plan accordingly to demonstrate that we are dedicated to Western Australia. If we're going to do property development, we understand the minimum criteria. So forth, if you were to go to Victoria or Sydney, again, we know the requirements and we need to make sure that we present the business plan accordingly. Once you receive a nomination approval from the state, you will then get invited by the Department of Immigration, where we'll have 60 days to lodge our application. Once we lodge the application, we'll need to wait between 1 to 2 years for processing. With our Hong Kong clients, this processing has been relatively quick. My last Hong Kong client was granted his 188 in about 5 to 6 months. So this is because they've become a priority with what's going on. But generally speaking, I think that should slow down now. And the processing time wouldn't be any faster than 12 months. So this is the reason why I tell people, do not do your investments yet. Because you're not granted the visa, there's no point, okay? So please understand that although that I would love you to make these investments, we need to ensure that your intentions are respected by us. We know that you want to demonstrate to the states that you do meet the requirements, but actually at the end of the day, we need to protect your investments as well. So the last slide that I'll go through is eligible investments. And these are examples of approved businesses in which we've done here in Western Australia and previously interstate. But obviously, with Victoria, it does say you can't do cafes and restaurants and so forth. And Queensland has restrictions on import and export. But I'm just going to go through the list anyway to give you some examples. So for instance, you can import and export businesses such as building materials, smart home products, wine, olive oil, and frozen meats. These are pretty much the core industries of our import and exports here in Australia. Going down to the bottom left, you can do service industries such as dental clinics, insurance brokers, mortgage brokers, real estate agencies, and student services. On the top right, you can do retail businesses such as restaurants, cafes, and fast food franchises. So a lot of people like to bring their franchises over from wherever country they're from, get the master franchise and come over here. Unfortunately, if you are not the master franchise and you just own a shop, you need to be very careful because you're not really demonstrating business skills because this is coming from the head office, okay? Land development, again, those other states had some issues with this, but in Western Australia, land subdivision, apartment development is a great opportunities for our investors, but we do not encourage you to do a small single scale one-off project because essentially you're just a passive investor, right? We need you to be active, looking for sites, doing your feasibility studies, doing building approvals and so forth. And that's how you demonstrate that you are actually a project developer. Okay. So that concludes the update on what is going on in Australia in terms of business visas. Obviously, we've had a lot of inquiries since the borders are now open, and we've been inviting a lot of our investors to come over here to ensure that they understand the market before they do any sort of investments. Although we are online, it's easy to ask questions. I do encourage people to contact us privately via our email there on the bottom or via our WhatsApp, purely because obviously we're all business people here and privacy is essential. I don't believe, I do apologize. I don't actually know how to get back onto the other social platforms to see if there's any other questions. So I'll get my teams to collect those questions and I'll attend to them privately. But should you have any questions or should you be in Perth, Western Australia in the foreseeable future, I do encourage you to come into our office and let's have a chat. We're more than happy to assist you. Even if you already have your business visa already and you're sort of concerned about the direction you're heading, we're more than happy to hold some discussions and talk to you. Until next time, I'll see you then. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.